Senator Lopez Polito.
Present.
Senator Cervantes. Senator Chua.
Here.
Senator Lee. Senator Sadiq. Senator Abdul Sadiq.
Present.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Abdul Sadiq.
I'm going to work on that. Senator Nelson. Senator Damavandi. Senator Yan.
Here.
Senator Lim.
Here.
Senator Liu.
Here.
Senator Martinez.
Here.
Senator Withrow.
Here.
Senator Guneman.
Present.
Senator Kuriakos. Senator Saba. Senator Munoz. Senator Math.
Yep.
Senator Artunian. Senator Sanhu.
Here.
Senator Naqvi.
Here.
Senator Gill.
Here.
Senator Calderon.
Here.
Senator Chi.
Here.
Senator Ubu. Is there any senator I did not call? 3 or 4?
With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved. We will now move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved. We will now move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the Senate at this time?
Hello everyone, my name is Kimo Gandol. I am here on behalf of the College Republicans at UCI to speak on Resolution 5432. More specifically, I found that it was ironic when I read it that the title was called Campus Climate, but it seems to only create a regulatory scheme designed at censorship. Upon reading it, I did discover it was quite an authoritarian piece that utilizes something of a perverse Orwellian incentive to report your friends and neighbors. More specifically, the resolution, what I found most problematic, says, I quote, "It calls upon students to report racial comments and expression of biases and discouraging any type of speech and expression which is racial or sexually oriented against targeted groups of individuals." This language by itself is not especially problematic. It is problematic when the first part of the resolution stipulates that this comes from a national problem. So this national discourse, which is permutated across the campus, specifically talking about the Republican Party and Democrats in the midterm election, that's the problem, insinuates that Republicans are racist, that racial expression has prevalency on campus as related to our organization. More specifically, it called upon, I quote, "The issue will impair the University of California, Irvine and its reputation of having the most liberal campus climate among the states, thus seeking the preservation of this liberal bubble around the University of California, Irvine." That within itself is viewpoint discrimination and is illegal. You cannot pass a piece of legislation that specifically calls upon you to bring students out to report on something that is based on somebody's political ideology, legitimate within the university system. UCI is prefaced upon the pursuit of truth. The problem with this is codified leftist language to insinuate that conservatives are indeed racist. Furthermore, using language such as reporting the expression of bias insinuates that anything which targets a specific group, which by the way, some groups should be targeted, especially if you're talking about merit. Leftists do the same thing. They say, oh, we should appropriate resources to different groups so we can help them. If we're going to have this sort of discussion, it can't be with the fear of the state utilizing, this retributive policy of reporting one another. This within itself should earn one of you to object to consideration of the question because it's an embarrassment that this establishment would support and ratify a piece of legislation that is on face illegal. Furthermore, using language such as, I quote, "The fissure of the comfortable and joyful," joyful is a very interesting piece of diction to use, something that would come out of, a double-think piece. But anyway, would dismantle the joyful learning environment and may cause emotional harms and distress onto other individuals. The university is supposed to cause distress. That's why you're here to learn. It's supposed to be stressful because you're experiencing new ideas, and difference, as part of an inherent feature, causes distress. You should be distressed. Now, that does not mean you should use violent language. I can't threaten you, but that language has already been, through the courts, and it's already been dissected to the point where it's already legal. You don't need to pass legislation upon it. So there's so many problems with this piece of legislation when it comes down to the censorship of speech, which is a general theme. The college Republicans at UCI strongly stand behind any policy that supports the freedom of speech, and clearly this one is meant to hamper that. More specifically, I would state my fear upon this legislation, the only reason I'm here, is because it's a very dangerous, slippery slope. When you pass a single piece of legislation that hampers speech, then you start passing others. And when we start passing others, we get into the utilization of speech regulations like we have at some campuses, which creates an environment where we can't promote actual discourse. I should be able to talk about, for instance, illegal aliens. And I use that quote because that's the quote used in the U.S. Code. It's how the legal discourse is created behind U.S. law, because if I'm forced to say undocumented immigrants, we're not addressing the actual problem. This sort of political correctness that permutates the university campus is both cancerous and harmful to the actual mission of UCI to promote truth. So I'm asking the Senate, vote down this piece of legislation because it's anti-free speech and on face illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the Senate at this time? Hearing and seeing none. Oh,
We have no.
my apologies.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Garshfield. I am a 2016 alumnus of UC Santa Barbara with political science. My friend Kimo showed me resolution 5432, and so I'm here tonight, having been on a UC campus in the past and currently as a member of your run community, to echo many of these concerns. Specifically, I would like to express my concern about the final be resolved clause, which says that you wish to send a campus-wide email to all students regarding encouraging students to report racial comments and expressions of bias, and discouraging any type of speech and expression which is racial or sexual oriented against targeted groups or individuals. I think that encouraging people to report on each other, rather than encouraging people to talk to each other, to confront each other, and to openly debate, goes against the very purpose of the liberal university. The author of this resolution mentioned early on that UCI is known as one of the most liberal campuses. I do vote Republican, but I would consider myself a liberal in the classical sense, insofar as I support the value of free expression, and that's what I'm here today to urge you all to support. Another note about UCSB, my senior year there, we got on the radar screen of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education for one of the school's speech codes. So I got together a group of other students of numerous political persuasions, and we lobbied the student government at UCSB to pass a resolution in support of free speech. Rather than passing this resolution, I would encourage you to do similar. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the Senate at this time? All right, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Special committee, or executive officer reports. Are there any other executive officer reports?
Yes. So this Thursday will be Movies for Mental Health from 6 to 8 at Emerald Bay AB. So the topics of the movies will be about anxiety, fighting the passions, and healing through art, as well as LGBTQ cultural signals. So it's free, and then food will be provided, as well as panel and discussions after the movie.
Are there any other executive officer reports?
Yes, I would like to bring attention to the bill of the reallocation from EBP to IBP and student services.
One moment.
Do I read it?
Oh, what, are you,
Well, no, I'm saying in terms of like just.
oh, well, this one's on the agenda for Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. All right.
No worries.
Never mind.
So do you have any Okay, are there any other executive officer reports? All right, hearing and seeing none, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, special committee reports. There are no special committees currently standing. So we will now move on to our next item on the agenda, item 1 under old business, food security and justice training for 15 minutes. Oh, give me 1 moment to load up the PowerPoint. Having trouble with my email, so I'm gonna have to log into that.
Is there PowerPoint? Share to left?
Yeah, but for some reason I can't. So, email, so.
It's not shared to everyone.
Yeah, I'll pull it up on here so everyone can see it once I log in. So wait, you share it with my UCI or my AS?
Both.
Okay, it's not letting me, like, open it on my Senate email?
Share it again.
Okay, I'll go ahead and try my other email as well, just in case.
You want to use a flash drive?
And I have it pulled up, it's just like, it says I need to ask for permission to view it, so I think maybe I try that. Okay, there we go, I got it.
All right, so I just wanted to talk about food insecurity. Can you go back?
Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to talk about food insecurity in terms of what food insecurity is, because I know AS has been doing a lot of advocacy work for the past 4-ish years in terms of bringing more resources on campus. Just to give you all a little more background information, food insecurity is basically not having access to any healthy, nutritious meals. A lot of us as college students, we eat ramen and we think that's being food insecure, but it's actually not, because we're not really getting any healthy, nutritious resources from the ramen that we're eating. Next slide. Should you play the video? So that's like a quick video about like, what food insecurity is.
Food insecure. Food insecurity is not knowing if you'll have enough food to eat today, tomorrow, or if you're a farmer, when food from your harvest runs out. The most extreme form of food insecurity is famine. If I'm food secure, I always have enough calories and the right kinds of food to lead a healthy and active life. Floods and drought make farmers vulnerable to losing their source of food or income overnight. Conflict forces people to flee their homes and reduces the amount of food farmers can grow. International trade rules can hurt local farmers and entrepreneurs by putting them out of business and cutting jobs. Most poor farmers don't own the land they farm and risk losing it. When governments don't invest enough in local agriculture, countries produce less food and depend more on imported food. But poor spend up to 80% of their earnings on food, so any rise in food prices means they have to cut back on the number of meals they eat. If you grow up without enough food, your body is weaker and you'll find it harder to escape poverty. Your kids are likely to grow up hungry too. But the world produces more than enough food to feed everyone. The challenge is to make sure everyone can access it.
So it's like basically the question of like how we ask each other, have you eaten yet? With your friends, your peers, your family, and kind of reiterating what food insecurity is to not have a nutritious form of substance every day for 3 meals a day. There's 2 different kinds of food insecurity, diet quality versus diet quantity. So you could have diet quality is in terms of not having a nutritious meal, and opposite. Diet quality is not having a nutritious meal, and quantity is not having enough food to eat, right? And then the next slide, please. So this slide just talks about like the impact of food insecurity on college students specifically. So if you think about it, if you're in class, you haven't eaten breakfast or lunch, and it's a 3 p.m. class, your stomach is grumbling, you have no attention to give to the lecturer, and all you can think of is where you're going to eat your next meal or when you're going to eat your next meal. So it impacts a lot of academic success for students. It impacts your mental health. It impacts your professional development because you really can't pay attention to what's happening in the current moment. Next slide, please. To go over a little statistics, so UQ's is UC Undergraduate Experience Survey. It's a survey that's sent out every 2 years to a random sample of UC students. About 8,500 students answer it from each campus every other year when it's sent out. And 2 years ago, a report was released, and it showed that 48% of the undergraduate population are found to be some sort of food insecure. So some level of food insecurity once a day, once a week, or once a month. Next slide, please. This kind of just shows in the pie charts the same statistics. In graduate students, it's 25%, undergrads is 48%, and kind of talking about the total percentage of food insecure population within the students in the UC system. The next slide just talks about how how it really impacts your daily life as a student, right? It's shown that it significantly affects your GPA and your grades in classes. So it's not just something that we're talking about without having statistics. This is something that has been proven over and over again that students who don't have a meal to eat, it shows in your grades. Next slide. This is like a quick video about testimonials from students all across the UC.
The notion of the starving college student is in existence for a reason. We're all looking for food.
You're sitting in a 3-hour lecture, and you're doing your best to stay awake, to pay attention, and you take a note, and you're hungry. And, sometimes it's a circumstance that you have to get used to that kind of hunger.
I've experienced food insecurity through depression. I feel like I'm living in the essential forms. So I live in 11 40 meal plan, that's 11 meals a week, and without the financial capability to supplement those 11 meals, I'm going to be lots of money for this food insecurity.
As a student who can take out loans to university studies, depend on the check-by-check income to budget for books, let alone groceries.
I have experienced food insecurity as a UC student by having to eat sometimes 2 meals a day in order to save money on the rising costs of tuition as well as housing rent.
It bears on my mood, on my ability, and ultimately my ability to perform academically.
Every single month since I moved out on my own, I've been food insecure, and it's impacted all of my activities from what I feel like I'm able to do to how I'm able to participate in school to even some of the connections that I've had with other people.
It's not just certain communities that you expect to be hungry.
On a daily basis, you have to balance this like typical college life with a budget. The shame associated with not being able to
why are people ashamed to say, you know what, I actually don't have enough money and I can't eat this week? Like, it's a shame, it's a damn shame. And everyone always talks about the freedom of speech and like the right to life, liberty, and like the pursuit of happiness or whatever. Well, that is food.
Food truly defines our culture, food defines our health, food defines how well we're able to do in school.
A lot of students, they're putting their financial stability at stake, they're putting, their family priorities off. It's a big issue. They're making an investment in themselves and in the state, and it's about time that the state makes the same investment to make sure that they're secure in their food and their housing, so they can come here, learn, and contribute to California's growth.
Can you go back to the previous slide again? So kind of going back to the data, right? Nearly 70% students buy cheap food knowing that it's not going to be healthy or nutritious, or it's not going to sustain them throughout the day and through college. And learning takes a lot of mental stress, and we do need food to sustain ourselves through classes, through work, and everything. And also, one big argument that's usually put forth is saying that these students actually become food insecure from when they're children. So they don't come into the UC system and then suddenly become food insecure. What like a common misinterpretation is what's said around, right? But nearly 60% of students did not report being food insecure as children. So these are not students who are coming in from low-income backgrounds, but these are students coming in from like well-off backgrounds back in school, but all of a sudden when they come to college, they can't afford food. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Don't. So does anyone know who manages our food on campus? Aramark? Yeah. Next. So yeah, Aramark is actually the company that manages all our food on campus, and not just our campus, but they also manage other hospitals, sport venues, schools, special events, and of course prisons. They have been managing the Olympic Games for the past 8 years. Next, please. So the reasons why we contract our dining services to Aramark is because it's cost effective, quote unquote. They invest a lot in constructing food infrastructure on campus, and outsourcing jobs means cheap labor. Next slide. Next. So first, why is it cost effective? Because the amount Aramark spends on per student is less than $2.75 per student, and the amount we pay per meal is about $12. So just think about like how much profit they're making off of students instead of actually contributing to students' safety and health on campus. The food that they buy is from a company called Cisco. So they actually outsource all their groceries from another third vendor party, and all the products that Cisco provides are low food quality, and a lot of chefs who worked in Aramark have tested to this. The next, please. They invest in a lot of campus buildings. So when they sign our contract with UCI, they pledged to invest millions of dollars into food service infrastructure. So like the bio-sized Starbucks that we have on campus, that was completely paid off through Aramark. Next. Aramark employees do not receive living wages. They're prohibited from unionizing to fight for higher wages, and even though regular workers are UCI employees, they're not afforded the same rights as UC service workers whose contracts are negotiated through these unions like ASUCI and everything. And that's why when you see like the yearly ASUCI strike, and every freshman is mad all of a sudden saying like, oh, where's my food at? Or like, why are we getting fed in paper plates and bowls? Is because they're literally not able to get living wages, and they have to fight to ask for living wages. Next slide, please. Can you play this video and forward to 722?
What is
She's
clear
a-
so far is that we are doing a terrible job of taking care of people that it is very easy for all of us not to care about. But here's the thing. Increasingly, we aren't taking care of them at all. Private subcontractors have steadily been taking over certain services, like the Aramark Corporation, who provide food to prisons and a promise that with Aramark you can expect more savings. And hey, look, when you're being thrifty with food costs, what's the worst that can happen?
Record shows 65 instances where Aramark employees failed to provide food or ran out. Private vendor Aramark changed recipes to include cheaper, sometimes substandard ingredients. Aramark Correctional Services made headlines recently after maggots were found in food served at prisons here in Michigan.
That is not good. The only time when you are happy to hear the words maggots were found is when you are a maggot whose family was lost at sea. We floated 3 days on a piece of bread, but we never lost hope. And it's not just food being privatized, it's prison healthcare too. Arizona tried that. Guess how it turned.
Next slide. Just please. So these are some resources that are offered on campus, right? The Fresh Basic Needs Hub came completely from student efforts. So 3 years ago, we had the Food Pantry Initiative that was run by a couple of students to have every student fund $3 per quarter to bring this Fresh Basic Needs Hub and a full-time employee. So we have a hub on campus that can actually retain student success in terms of academic and giving them basic necessities. And then CalFresh. Most students are automatically qualified for CalFresh, especially if you work more than 20 hours a week, or if you have work study, or if you have Cal Grant and Pell Grant. The next one is Zara Hunger. So Zara Hunger is an initiative that was started 2 years ago, where all freshman students or any meal swipe holders can donate their excess meal swipes to this program, and then we then give it to the emergency meal swipe program to the Fresh Basic Needs Hub, and that can be redistributed to students who actually want them. So if you ever want a meal swipe or anything, you can apply through the emergency meal swipe program under the Fresh website. And then we also have the Economic Crisis Response Grant that is on all campuses. We have a certain amount of money that's allocated to this grant so that students who have like immediate need of money, or if it's an emergency, they can apply to this and they can get like up to $1,000. But yeah, that's the end of it. Do y'all have any questions?
So, you said the Aramark doesn't pay living wages, do you know how much you do get paid?
No.
I actually work for Aramark and we get paid minimum wage. So time has expired.
Motion to extend time by 2 minutes.
Are there any objections? Are there any objections? Hearing seeing none, time is extended.
So I saw in the video that it said that we're committed to making the UC system food secure by 2020. Like, at this point, do you think that's a possible timeline?
Obviously, anything is possible, but also everything is impossible, because unfortunately we do live in a system where everything is capitalized at this point. So the only way that something could happen is if we either end our contract after 4 years with Aramark. So our contract with Aramark expires in the next 4 years. So if that happens, or if we reduce prices, and even for example, if you look at like Panda Express and everything, it's not really ethnic food. They just added Spice Republic yesterday, and I just visited there, and they use frozen foods. So like that's like one of the biggest reasons why like it's not even nutritious, even though it says it is. Yes.
So what would you want in replacement
To Aramark? So obviously, once we pull out from Aramark, and if UCI has to go everything on its own, it's gonna cost us a lot for the first 1 or 2 years, because we have to, there's no institutional memory of any dining services or how to run dining. There's no labor. We really have to rehire every single employee to make sure we have employees under UCI and not Aramark. And that's gonna cost us like more than it would cost us if we stuck with Airmark. But after 2 years is when we really start seeing the difference, and it's about long term than short term.
I want to ask this because during the course of your presentation, you've changed a lot of the words you're using. So I want to ask, are the views presented in this presentation your views, that of your office, or of the whole ASO? Because, the reason I ask is you said if we do leave the Airmark contract, and then you said when we leave the Airmark contract, so I'm
It's
trying
not us, we're not responsible for Airmark contract, I'm talking about UCI.
Okay.
Time has expired on this item. Thank you. With that, we'll now move on to our next item on the agenda, ASUCI Senate budget discussion. This is a closed session item, so at this time, I would like to ask all members of the public to please leave the room. Is it still going?